We're going to spend some more time in this video talking about negative exponents. So, let's see some examples. So, number 64. So here we have a situation where we have 3 to the negative 1 minus 4 to the negative 1 power, right? So, the first thing we have to do is think of order of operations, right? So, we have subtraction, and then we have exponents, right? So, which comes first in our hierarchy? And if you said exponents, then you're right. So we're going to deal with the exponents first. So 3 to the negative 1 power. Remember, if you have a negative exponent, if you change the position of the base, that'll change the sign of the exponent, right? So if I want to make that exponent positive, I would move the 3 to the bottom, and that would give me a positive 1, right? And we know 3 to the first power is just 3, so I'm just going to leave it as 1 over 3. And remember that when you do drop a base, you have a 1 on top, right? If there's nothing else there, then you put a 1 there, of course. All right, and so then I have minus. Same thing with the 4. 4 to the negative 1 power is 1 over 4. And that 4, of course, has an invisible 1 as its exponent. All right, so now it's just 1/3 minus 1/4. So now we can subtract now that we've dealt with the exponents. And we can get a common denominator here. So 12 will be our common denominator. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom, or the numerator and denominator of 1/3 by 4. That'll give me 4 over 12. And then I'm going to multiply 1/4 by 3 on top and bottom. All right, and then we subtract, and we get 1/12. All right. Now, number 66, same idea, right? Before we add, we have to deal with these exponents. One issue is what to do with this negative, right? So remember, exponents only affect what they're directly adjacent to or next to, what they're directly touching. And so this negative 2 here only affects the 1, not the negative. Okay, if we had parentheses, that would be a different story. But we don't have parentheses around the negative and the 1. So when I apply this exponent here, it's going to be just the 1 will drop, right? It'll be 1 over 1 squared, and that negative is just going to remain in front. Okay, so I'm not squaring the negative with the 1, I'm just squaring the 1. And just dropping the 1. All right, and then here, similar thing. So it'll be 1 over 1 squared. All right, so basically at this point, you might be able to recognize that, oh yeah, these are opposites, right? So if you add opposites, what do you get? Or if you add additive inverses, then you get 0, right? So it's just going to be negative 1, right? 1 squared is 1, so that's going to turn to 1. This will turn to 1. 1 over 1 will be 1, so it's just 1, negative 1, negative 1 plus 1, which is 0, right? All right, 68. So we have a couple negative exponents here. But here's just the power rule. We have an exponent outside the parentheses, exponents inside the parentheses, or at least one exponent inside. So we can just multiply those. So power over power rule. So remember, our base stays the same. We multiply negative 2 by negative 2, and we get positive 4. And then remember, always make sure that you evaluate your constants, right? So if you have a constant to an exponent, make sure that you evaluate that and get it to its simplified form. So 2 to the 4th power is 16. All right, and then number 70, basic product rule, right? We're multiplying bases that are like bases so we can add the exponents. So remember that when we do that, when we use the power rule, the base stays the same, right? So we don't multiply 4 by 4 and get 16 and then also change the exponent. That's not how it works. The base stays the same, only the exponent changes. And the way the exponent changes, we add them, right? So we can add negative 12 plus 11, and we get negative 1. And then 4 to the negative 1 power, negative exponent there, we can drop it. So it becomes 1 over 4 to the positive first. And that invisible 1 there, we can just leave out and just leave it as 1/4 simplified. All right, so make sure that, remember that you want to simplify constants that have exponents, but you also want to make sure that whenever you see simplify as your directions, make sure that you have no negative exponents, right, in your answer. All right, so that's why I had to do this step, right, from here to here, because I don't want to leave a negative exponent as part of my answer. All right, so 72. So once again, we have the product rule, product property. So I'm going to bring over the base, and I'm just going to add the exponent, right? So negative 22 plus 24, that equals positive 2. And then 10 squared, of course, is 100. All right. So hopefully this is making sense. If you have any questions, as usual, bring them to class, or you feel free to email me. All right, 74. So here we have a few things going on. We have some negative exponents, right? We also are dividing, so quotient rule might come into play. And then we also have this situation where we have a power raised to another power. So with all the operations, we have division, exponents, right? And we have exponents here. So the first thing we're going to do is, before we divide, we're going to deal with this exponent, right? So exponents come before division in order of operations. So I'm going to use the power rule first. So 10 comes down, I'm going to multiply those exponents. So negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. So I just multiply those. Okay, so now I have 10 to the negative 14th divided by 10 to the negative 15th. So remember that the quotient rule, we can subtract the exponents. So I'm going to subtract negative 14 minus negative 15. Okay, so negative negative turns into a positive. So I subtracted this minus this, and I get positive 1. And we know anything to the first power is itself, so I'm just going to leave that as 10.